All right, we are rocking and rolling. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of DCTV. Happy Friday to all. Very exciting weekends. We head into Final Four weekend. Um, Incredibly excited to welcome on an absolute legend in the sports betting space, the one and only Doug Kezirian. Welcome on, my friend.
Good to be with you, Dash. This is awesome time of year. Obviously, all these sports overlapping, and then really the apex of college basketball, right? So, good to be with you. Always looking to talk sports all the time. It's all I want to, live and breathe this stuff. I have a studio in my home, so that's what I'm available to do.
Yeah, for those of you that may not necessarily be familiar with Doug, but you recognize his voice. When I say that he is a legend in the space, I truly mean it. He was the host of really like the first publicly broadcasted show on a huge network that was focused specifically on sports betting. That was Daily Wager on ESPN. You may have seen articles of him literally breaking sports books for incredible reads, betting on the NFL draft. He has one of the longest track records in a public forum of profitability, and we are incredibly lucky to have him on the platform, have him on this stream, and break down a bit of the slate. So very excited to dive in.
Thanks a lot, man. I really, really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I've always believed in transparency. I know some of these big sports books want you to think it's about, it's just a lottery ticket. It's just, no one's supposed to win. It's like, well, there's a way to do both, right? And I try to track units. Do I win every day? Of course not. Do I win every season? I know really sharp baseball guys who've had losing seasons, not all the time, but once in a while. And then, maybe a future comes in, things like that. But it's really hard to do it, but the people who promise you everything is really the scare tactic, so to speak. So I'm here to talk with transparency and openly, and I'll put my, records up against anyone. And I believe in this industry. I love it. I think it's a great way to consume sports if it's done in a healthy way, a non-predatorial way. I just don't like it when people abuse the trust and things like that.
Undoubtedly. And that's really what puts you in a league of your own in many ways. I mean, looking at 2025, you're up 30.18 units. That's on a 0.25 unit scale. So really like over 100 units. Last month was an awesome month for you, up 12.5 units. The month of February was fantastic, up 23 units. When I think about you and your specialties, you can hand it a cap at all, but WNBA is right around the corner. So can't wait to have you back on when WNBA returns. Between WNBA and betting on the NFL draft, you've made folks and yourself a lot of money. So excited to dive into those two forums as well.
Well, those are the niche markets, right? I mean, it's really important. Olympics, swimming, and water polo too, because I played water polo. You know it from your college days, how good of a program you guys had. But what it comes down to, it's a sports book says, hey, Jimmy, you got swimming this year, or hey, Jimmy, you got the NFL draft. And they're not experts, right? They're competing with experts. And these markets are so unique where a slight move in the juice, you just got to kind of retrain your brain about what price sensitivity is, right? In baseball, in Major League Baseball, a half run on a total is massive. Like the difference between 8 and 8.5, huge. But in the draft, going from 13.5 to 15.5 slot could be big, could not be, depending on the position and who's drafting 14 and 15, right? So those things are what's so key and nuanced. It just takes a lot of brain power, a lot of understanding of these niche markets that the bettors can have, but it's really hard for the odds makers to have in all the sports. So they don't focus on these niche ones. And that's where I like to pounce with the WNBA and things along those lines.
Yeah, I know WNBA is not quite here yet, but give a little sneak peek. You do have some action in women's hoops. So excited to hear that breakdown. I want to start on the MLB front because you do have a play this evening that goes off, in less than an hour. So just to start, I'm curious to hear your take on the MLB season thus far, or any surprises, teams that you're super excited about, teams that you may think disappoint, And then I want to get into the play that you shot me heading into the show.
Yeah, baseball's tricky. I read this literally a week ago, and that's another thing. You can always be learning, right? Someone said it's really into 3 seasons, the baseball season. It's like the preseason, which is like the win totals, the first half, and then the second half. I know a lot of sharp bettors who don't even bet the second half because they're just getting ready for football season. I threw myself into the WNBA because I needed something to pass the time. And then baseball was just, can take years off your life. And then I ended up really thinking I was good at it, and I just dove all in of WNBA. But I liked hoops, and it was a few days a week, light lift. Baseball can be great. It can really be great. And I think it goes back to that price sensitivity thing I was referencing. Yeah. Sometimes the market can be so stubborn that there's still value on certain guys. I'm old enough to remember Greg Maddux pitching, but it's more about Pedro Martinez or someone who's just a huge name that there are other pitchers who are really valuable. Like Will Warren today was a great bet because he's changed where he is on the rubber. He's closer to third base. Obviously, the sunlight in a day game's different. And Dash, fill in here if I'm missing something, but this sport better than I do. But there are certain angles where, the books will only move about 5-10 cents if a sharp bet comes in. And really, if this game were replayed later in the season, it might be 50 cents difference, whether it be the first half money line. Because, the Marlins are out to a nice start, but who did they beat, right? The Rockies, great. Congratulations. So the Yankees have looked good. Warren's looked great. He's better at home. These are things where you can really sort of abuse the market and just pounce and use the stubbornness of that market against them when it's not a Pedro Martinez pitching or someone like that. I just think there can be still line value on favorites and opportunities to really pounce.
Undoubtedly. Funny story about Will Warren. I faced him a bunch in AA. He had not moved over on the rubber at that point in time, and I still had a very, very difficult time even making contact. So that's why he's pitching against the Marlins today, and I am not hitting. I completely agree with you on that front. If you look at the 5-1 Marlins playing the 5-1 Yankees, obviously the makeup of those two teams is entirely different. The talent levels of those two teams are entirely different, but there is some of that stubbornness. But before we dive into your action on the Cubs, you've made very, very clear, price sensitivity is massively important when it comes to betting on baseball. For somebody that's about to jump into a 162 game season, an attempt to last throughout the entirety of the year, do you have any pieces of advice for those folks that really want to take on the challenge of betting on baseball and want to do so in a profitable manner, but maybe aren't mentally or physically prepared to handle that 162 game slog?
Yeah, I would say play to your strengths. Okay, what are our advantages and our strengths? Anytime the market is a certain something, whatever it is, I lean into it. So with baseball, there's just a volume. Okay, it's overwhelming. There's a volume of games, volume of betting options of every game. So use that to your advantage. If you like Will Warren and stuff like that, betting pitcher props is great because you don't care about their offense, right?
Yeah.
If you just bet Warren strikeouts today, he's already cashed plus money, over 5.5 plus money. He's got 6. You don't even need the Yankees offense, right? So the more you can sort of trim the fat on a wager, if you think you have a good angle, it's a bunch of righties and whatnot, or the BABIP, whatever it is, okay? Flat spot, whatever it is. Baseball, more than other sports, I think, but really all sports, if you think about it, lets you kind of block out other variables and lets you just focus on, you can bet Will Warren's total outs recorded, total strikeouts. So let's say he's getting a bunch of 1 and 2 ground balls, right? Then it's like a bad beat on the strikeouts, but at least you get the bunch of outs. Earned runs allowed. So if a pitcher gives up a bunch of unearned runs, then it's okay. So you can really sort of block out the noise and focus on, this is really valuable with a guy like Paul Skeens when you don't have to worry about the Pirates offense. More applicable last year, but their offense, their offense is better this year. But that's my advice about baseball, is just fixate on what you know and what you like. And live wagering is a great tool. Now, the way people talk about live wagering is everyone wins. It's oh, just wait for live and get this. Oh, it's so easy to win live. No, it's just as hard. But things that And pitchers are really different. Pitching, especially the off-speed stuff, like a pitcher doesn't really know he has it until he gets on the mound. Like he's throwing in a vicinity, and then however the ball moves, the ball moves. So what I do with live betting on baseball, I definitely listen to the broadcast. The color guy is usually a former pitcher or former catcher, and they can tell if a guy's got it, you know? The other night, Max Fried was in Seattle. He just looked excellent. He was popping. Ohtani, the ball was popping the other day. And if you can sniff that out first, second innings, the market's not adjusting. They're using algorithms based on the closing line. So you're getting to see some stuff that, you know, obviously there's no guarantee it's sustainable. Christopher Sanchez looked great the other night in the first inning and then had guys on base all game the rest of the way. He did ultimately pitch okay, but he was in trouble the entire way. So I would just listen to the broadcast. The color guy knows what he's talking about, and you can sort of sound things can seem and feel different, and that, you know, again, and then you can bet live props, you can bet live whatever. Again, block out the noise, trim the fat.
You said two things in there that really got my attention. One of them was that you can't win every live bet. I'm going to have to question you on that because I was subscribed to you last WNBA season, and anytime I saw a live notification get sent out, you must have been hitting at 85% or something ridiculous last year.
Yeah, I mean, those markets are soft for sure.
Just a matter of if I could get it in on time. But yeah, thank you very much for that insight. I want to attack the 162 game season. The other thing that you said that really caught my attention is finding those niche markets or those markets that you can specialize in, not necessarily the big three. You know, you sent me 4 plays that you like for today. None of them fall in the category necessarily of traditional, you know, full game sides, totals, or money line. So that's where you appear to have carved a niche is targeting those smaller markets. Let's transition to this Cubbies matchup that you called out directly. We got Cubs Guardians in Cleveland. Cubbies out to a bit of a slow start. We got Lewis here in the chat, the biggest Cubs fan that I know. Obviously, they made some noise with signing PCA and my former collegiate teammate Nico Horner long-term deals. So there's a lot of excitement around that club, but coming out to a 3-3 start is probably not what they had hoped. Why do you like them in particular in this first 5 market here today?
Okay, so when you're betting on a team in baseball, you're obviously pitching matters so much. I'm a big fan of Horton. Okay, so you also got to think about, I don't know, narratives or takeaways. It's like, oh, Horton got touched up a little bit by the Nats. That's not a good sign. Well, after 5 or 6 days, we learned the Nats may not be that bad, right? They obviously have a big bat in the lineup and Wood and some other guys. So, and Horton, you know, expectations this year as opposed to last year. So he might have had some jitters early, and maybe the Wrigley was a little chilly. You know, I haven't given up hope on him at all. Like, look what Skeens did in his second game compared to his first. Sometimes there's some jitters with guys who haven't been there before and stuff like that. I also don't really think a whole lot of the Guardians pitcher, and I think the Cubs lineup is fine. Yes, they're technically in last place, but they're still 3-3, and the whole division's 500 or better. So I think there's a little bit of line value there, and I do like to isolate first 5. I just think if you're going to be betting on a starting pitcher, you should probably break up your bet to first 5 in game, unless the bullpen's terrible. I mean, the splits last year, the first 5 in game on first 5 for the Pirates versus what the game money line was were really funny, just ridiculous. But in general, I like to break it up. Now you can get some pushes, which is no fun, but you can also get you can lay the half run. And if you got a good pitcher with you want to lower the money line. But in general, I do like the first 5. I know guys who bet the first 3. Again, if it's out there, think about it, and then you can do your research. Who's better at the top of the lineup? Whatever. But I think the Cubs are going to be just fine. And you mentioned the big contracts. Like some of these guys, it takes a while to settle in. Remember, Soto took a while his first game after first little bit after the Mets, because there's a lot of pressure. You get a lot more attention. So Horton I think he'll be just fine. And sometimes regression you want to bet on, right? So like Skeens, I keep coming back to that, but he was terrible in the first. Like you're going to bet he's going to step up in the next game. So I think Horton's going to be fine. And I think there's some line value with the Cubs these days.
I love that angle. I am very long on the Cubs this year. And to your point, it's a great bounce back spot. So I'm seeing that first 5 laying the half a run at plus 123. If you want to, play just first 5 pure money line, I'm seeing a minus 115 out there. So that's a fantastic read and something that I already got in as soon as you sent it to me. Nice. I want to transition over to a play that you really like in women's college hoops this evening. I mentioned earlier, when I think about WNBA specialists, like you are the single individual that comes to mind as the specialist. Talk to me about what you like in that Texas game this evening and tell me why.
Thanks. Yeah. And by the way, I have a WNBA future. We can do a little cherry on top at the end. But so the women's bracket, for those who don't know, have all 4 1 seeds. And we know UConn's undefeated, has the player of the year in Sarah Strong. AZ Fudd might be the number 1 pick. They're good. They're really good. But we don't know if they're like epically great because they play in the Big East. It's just a bad conference. So they're laying 6.5 against South Carolina. But the other game, I feel like we know more of the matchup. Texas is a 1.5 point to 2 point favorite against UCLA. They actually played each other on Thanksgiving back here in Las Vegas in a nice, holiday tournament. And Texas was the better team. Now, obviously, both teams are different, but that was UCLA's only loss. They ripped through the Big Ten, I want to say 18-0. They have a 6'7" center who's good. Lauren Betts, she's agile. She might be the number 1 pick. If she's not, she's going to be the 2 pick. They're going to have like 4 first-round picks. One of them is Jaime Jaquez's younger sister. She's a good wing player. They have another good wing player, Kiki Rice, is their point guard. She's going to be like, and when I say first round, there's only like 15 teams. So it's really like, top half of the first round in the NBA. And they're good. But Texas is like elite defensively. They're super athletic, and they have a 6'6" center. So you don't have to double Betts, who's 6'7", by the way. You don't have to double her. So all these teammates that get open because she's getting doubled and everything, but she can go to the free throw line and hit jumpers. She's not a stiff. She's actually the polar opposite of that. So she's good. I just think this Texas defense is uber athletic, super tough, and they smother the ball. My only concern is their offense is a little like Arizona on the men's side. They don't really rely on the three-pointer. They do a lot of mid-range, but the ball moves a lot, and they cut. They'll get layups and they'll get transition, but they don't press like hardcore press like some other teams like Ohio State or something. So I just think they're going to beat you, and I like the first half under. Some of these fourth quarters get away from these teams because like in the NBA, you can advance the ball with timeouts and everything. So I get a little nervous in the fourth quarter. But the first half, I like the under. I think Texas's defense is good, and the Bruins will be up for it. But I think UT has a legendary coach in Vic Schaefer. He's been close, but no cigar in his career. And I think they're live here to win the whole thing and beat UConn in the final. But I think they take care of UCLA. I don't think they're going to be looking past them because they beat them in November.
Beautiful. I would love to provide some insight on top of that. I will be the first to admit that I am in no position to speak on the state of women's college hoops. It's interesting seeing all 4 1 seeds still in play. It's crazy seeing some of these records. I mean, UConn coming in at 38-0, South Carolina, historic program, 35-3, Texas 35-3, and UCLA 35-1. So that should be a good one and really build some momentum heading into a couple fun matchups tomorrow that I definitely want to get a quick take on from you. I guess we can transition there now. Was not something that I reached out to you in advance to get your thoughts on in regards to the men's side. I am curious. Obviously, 2 very fun, very different matchups tomorrow. Do you have any thoughts, opinions, leans, official plays?
Of course. So I think the big game, the Michigan Arizona game, kind of funny. It reminded me of high school and all those 900 numbers. They're like, we have inside information on the. I think anyone who swears that they have like the answer to this game is lying through their teeth. I think this is like they play this 10 times, 5 teams, each team wins 5 times. So even if Michigan wins by 20, I think it's just a fluke outcome for Arizona if they rematch. Like we've seen Georgia and Alabama play the SEC title game, and we've seen a rematch in the championship game, and the other team was favored, right? Who lost, by a decisive margin of double digits or something. So I think this is a coin flip. And going back to live wagering, I think you're silly to bet this game ahead of time. Yeah. I think both teams will have a lead by about 5 points at some point. I just think, if you're like, hey, I made it pick and I'm taking 1.5, I respect that. But I think you'll be able to get 2.5, 3.5 during the game at some point. My breakdown is Michigan's best is better than anyone's. They go on these runs for like 6 minutes. It's just like overwhelming, maybe even 4 minutes. But I think Arizona's floor is a lot higher, and they're more reliable and more consistent. Now, does that mean you get more wins throughout the course of the season, but maybe not against the elite competition? I don't know. I think Dusty May is the best coach, definitely the better of the two. And I think having these 5-6 days to prepare will certainly have them. Now, the Wolverines a little banged up, things like that. But if I had to pick it, I'd take Michigan. But I got Arizona in my bracket, and I picked in the beginning of the tournament. Michigan's been a little inconsistent. I mean, I just saw Minnesota play courtside here in the Crown in Vegas, and they were terrible. They couldn't hit anything. And they were like, down 4 to Michigan late with like 4 minutes to go. So I think Michigan kind of can play with their food a little too much, but their upside is so impressive.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see if Michigan can get out to a lead early with Arizona's lack of interest and skill in shooting 3-pointers, if that makes them press a little bit. So we'll see on that front. There was probably 2-3 weeks ago heading into the tournament, we had a guest on that gave out Michigan to win it all at about 4-1.
Nice.
I am holding on to one of those tickets. I hope that some of the 250 folks tuning in are as well. You've seen every situation in the history of sports betting. If you were me and holding on to that Michigan future, is it worth trying to find an angle to hedge? You mentioned the live angle, which is definitely something that I hope to double dip, maybe grab Arizona plus 6.5 and Michigan wins, but Arizona covers. Any thoughts or advice on that front?
So I think with these things, I think you got to be like price sensitive in terms of if it's a big ticket, then you got to start thinking, smartly about some stuff.
I'll cut you off there. Definitely not as big as your $300,000 winner in the NFL draft. We'll put it that way. Take away 3 decimal points from that.
If it's life-changing money, you have to factor that in. But if it's not and it's a good amount, then that's all part of the equation. Also, you have to, I think in these cases, kind of interject your opinion. If you like Michigan in the game, I think that should play a role in your decision to hedge. I will say whoever wins this game will be about a 5 to 6 point favorite, maybe 4.5 in the championship game. So that's a nice thing to know. And that other game is earlier, right? So before Michigan tips off, you'll know if it's UConn, which means the spread will be 6.5 versus Illinois. And if Illinois didn't look that great, maybe it'll be 4.5, 5 instead of like 3.5, 4. So that's part of the equation. I think it's always smart to lay off a little bit during the game. If you can grab a 3.5 or something like that. I wouldn't get too cute with the 1.5, 2.5. I would bet an Arizona future at plus 175 instead. Because I think the champion is coming from this game. I don't think much of Illinois. I really don't. I think their upside is great, but I don't think their battle test. I think they lose the UConn, frankly, but it's just a hunch. I'm not betting it. But I don't think Underwood's that great in late game execution. I just don't see Illinois winning these 2 games. I just don't. But it could happen, right? I would say it all depends. You can lay off half at plus 170. You just got to do the math in your head because you don't want to come out of this losing money. Like if you lay money on Arizona plus 175 and then Michigan advances, you're like, well, now I'm stuck this. And now do I take the points? And, you end up grinding out a break-even point, which you don't want to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I was thinking through the Arizona to win it all angle. I saw a plus 200 out there. I don't know if it's still out there. That was on Monday or Tuesday this week. So I appreciate that insight. And like I said, hopefully some of the listeners are holding on to that ticket and got some value out of that commentary. I know you're a busy man. You have another show coming up here a little later this afternoon. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the NBA. Obviously, the playoffs are approaching. There are 2 games that you called out directly that you do have action on this evening. Before we dive into those, give me your take on this season as a whole and really a couple teams that have surprised you, have disappointed you. Curious to get your thoughts on this season as a whole, and then we can jump into those games in particular.
Yeah, I mean, every NBA season's different, right? And I think about 3 to 4 years ago, the NBA really sort of became a league of parity, or at least more parity than we were used to. In the past, it was like 2 teams maybe that can win it all. I mean, the Warriors were minus money the year they had Durant, and some teams, it was like literally 2.5 teams that could win it all. Now it's like 6, 7 that could conceivably win it all. Sure, OKC is the team to beat, but they're not infallible. So that's what's cool about the season. And every year there's kind of new identities, especially in the preseason. During the regular season, there's always a team that takes things too seriously, like the Pistons this year. So that's been interesting to observe. Last year was the Cavs. I would say the Spurs obviously have come on that no one really saw in terms of the regular season. So I always enjoy that sort of aspect, like which team emerges to be like guns blazing, all in from the opening tip. In terms of the futures market, obviously we had a big shift in the MVP with ESPN's straw poll by Tim Bontemps coming out today. So SGA went from like 330 to minus 2,000 or something insane, just because. This is really important for all awards betting, not just this MVP. The difference in prices is not supposed to reflect the voting. Okay. So when you have minus 350 and minus 250, it's like, oh, it's going to come down to the wire. Like, no, that doesn't. It can just mean that we don't really know how 20 people of the voting population might vote. In this SGA thing, like, you can get a bunch of first place votes and barely win, but you won. And so there is a way. I was going to write an article like I thought SGA minus 350, minus $4 made sense. Because I think the voting might be closer than people think, but it takes a lot for him to not win. And that's something to keep in mind with all of these, because in this straw poll, like SGA was overwhelming with 88 first place votes. For all we know, 85 of those, it was razor thin. But again, it's not based on points and decimal point. It's either so-and-so or so-and-so. So that 88 can have a distinct edge, even though it could be, a close vote or a close decision for each person. So that's just something to keep in mind. The futures market in general, in terms of teams, I don't know. There's so many question marks. I think Cade Cunningham's coming back, so that's part of it. I don't think the Thunder have this in the bag. There'll be moments where you think like, gosh, I should just bet the Thunder at plus 130. I'm just not there. I just think there's too many potholes. And look, we saw Halliburton last year for the other team get hurt. And still, the Thunder almost didn't win in Game 7. So I do think some of these long shots have a little bit of life. I think the Pistons at 25-1 have life. I think the Spurs at 6-1 have life. Remember, they've dominated that matchup, and we can't forget that. And OKC may have the MVP, but there were a couple times where we all thought OKC was going to win this game, and then the Spurs just punked them.
Yeah, that's once again just fantastic advice for folks listening, because I've thought about clicking the button on plus 130 multiple times, and it has been fun. The introduction of more parity into the sport. It almost feels more like baseball, where the Blue Jays kind of come out of nowhere, get hot at the right time. Right. And historically, it just hasn't been the case. I'm a Warriors fan, so I've been on the right side of that for a couple of those lack of parity years. But that's fantastic feedback. I want to move over to a game that you called out specifically, Boston at Milwaukee. Looking at Boston is 17.5-point favorites, total sitting at 217.5. You had an interesting angle on this that I'd love to hear you talk through a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this goes back to what I was saying with baseball, right? In terms of, when there's a big menu with anything, just block out the noise. And I will say the Bucks have been playing pretty hard of late, and I don't want to necessarily bet against them, but I want to bet on the Celtics. I want to bet against the Bucks defense. So when you look at a game, you kind of figure out which unit has the biggest advantage or disadvantage. For me, it's Boston's offense against Milwaukee's defense. And so I just want to bet on that. And also, if you look at the stats, at least last year for sure, the Celtics had the single slowest pace in the entire NBA in the second half. So I kind of think their game script was get a lead and then just kind of milk the clock and play well the second half. And frankly, we saw that with the Knicks playoff series where they just kind of were playing the clock and not the actual game.
Yeah.
But I think this betting market can be really stubborn. Now, these first half totals based on the game total, they're sort of shaded one direction. They're not exactly the game total in half, but I don't think they're enough, especially when you factor in game totals. I mean, look at the Cavs last night. They covered the first quarter, first half, and then didn't come close to covering the game. The end of the game is very different, especially when the numbers get higher. It's just really different. I think the Celtics storm out of the gates and light up the Bucks defense. Bucks have played hard. Rollins is probably going to play tonight. So I just think is banking on Boston's offense against this wretched Milwaukee defense is the best way to play it. So I like the Celtics first half team total.
That is a beautiful read. And once again, like, it amazes me the angles at which you look at these games are just, that's why you're the professional and I'm the one paying the monthly subscription to you, because you are so creative and so thoughtful in how you approach these. Like I said, I know you're a busy man. You had one more angle that you.
Yeah, I was looking up what picks I sent you. I just want to be ready. So yeah, that was the one I liked. I actually don't have the number in front of me. And then the Raptors. Look, 82 game schedule in the NBA. There's a peak and a valley, right? There's lulls, there's everything. And so the Raptors just came off the most embarrassing loss of the season. They were double digits over the Kings, and the Kings went wire to wire in Toronto. It made no sense. And the NBA sometimes will do that, but you just got to forget what you last saw. So they lost at the Pistons by 11, and I think there was just a hangover. Came home, lost Sacramento. And the nice thing about Toronto is they have a psycho coach, okay? He's this Euro who's just intense. He goes bananas, and he's just not going to stand for it. So now they go to Memphis. Now the Grizzlies play hard. So I'm a little uneasy with the first quarter because Toronto's like rotation and everything. I think Toronto first half, they cover this number. I think they're going to be all business. They had the hangover, and then now it's an extra day. Now they should be ready to rock. And the Grizzlies, I mean, look, they play hard, but they're still pretty limited. And they do some things through stretches. And, there's a fine line between getting cute and then finding line value. Just remember, if you flip a coin 6 times versus flipping a coin 50 times, and 50 times, you're very likely to get a 50% sort of outcome, right? The larger the sample size, the more true of an outcome. But if you flip it 6 times, there's, you can get 4 and 2, right? So when you do first quarter and first half, that is a shorter amount of time, and therefore you're, in theory, less likely to get a true outcome of a game. You want the larger. That's why a baseball season and an NBA season's larger. You're going to get the truer outcome, and that's why a best-of-7 series is more predictable than a March Madness bracket, right? It's one game versus best-of-7. But there's a saturation point of that, because then you start getting into those tricky point spreads, and you also want to bet where you think there's an advantage in effort and focus. So Toronto off back-to-back losses with a psycho coach. So I just think first half's a little better than first quarter. Maybe first to 10. So it's over the top one way, but I think first half is like a nice happy medium where the depth of the Raptors shines to start the second quarter. When the second unit comes in, they're going to have a huge advantage over Memphis's second unit. Now, those guys are playing for 10-day contracts and all that. They're going to be busting their tail. They're not tanking. But I do think the talent gap. And then again, the Toronto needs this game. So that's why I like the Raptors here in the first half.
I love that. I'm seeing a 7.5 out there. don't have the odds screen pulled up in front of me. So there may be a better number out there, but we'll ride with 7.5. Doug, it is honestly a pleasure. I can truly say that I specifically remember watching you on ESPN growing up. It feels like I'm chatting with a celebrity, because I am in many ways. So I really appreciate you taking the time. For anybody listening, we spun up a little weekend free trial pass to Doug's Dub Club. We will get that out via email. We will get that out on socials. When I talk about guys that do things the right way, Doug is the perfect example of that. And we're lucky to have him on the platform. If you are interested in making money in unique, differentiated markets, this is the guy to do it. He really can handicap all sports. As I mentioned, up 30 units already here in 2026. That's on a 0.25 consistent unit scale. So depending on how you're playing those units, you can look at that as up over 100 on the year. So thank you very much. We're absolutely going to have you back multiple times, especially given a little WNBA preview, and excited to see how things play out the rest of today with some of the spots that you liked.
Well, thanks, man. And I appreciate everything Dub Club's done and letting me sort of do things my way, if you will, and be like I said, 0.25 units on a busy Wednesday. It's just like, I got nothing today, guys. Sorry. But no, it's been great. And this was fun, dude. It's always good catching up. I love chatting with you, and, just free to do it anytime. Appreciate everyone tuning in as well.
Beautiful. Well, go check Doug out on socials. Read up on his domination of the NFL draft market. Anytime I get the opportunity to chat with him, I love asking him to tell that story. So thank you once again, Doug, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, my man. Thanks. And everybody enjoy the games this weekend. Should be awesome.
Yes, sir.